got pregnant from his father and passed it off as his. He made sure I gave birth alone and broke. I'm not going to sugarcoat it, and I'm not going to pretend that I tripped and fell into my fiancé's father's bed. I slept with him because I wanted to. Although I knew it was wrong, I couldn't bring myself to stop. My fiancé's father, Martin, was a fun man, unlike Ryan, my fiancé who bore the hell out of me. So that's why we ended up having an affair, and I did my best to hide it from Ryan. To be honest, I never expected things to escalate the way it did. I thought I would carry my secret to the grave, but now I'm paying for it in the worst way ever. Ryan's revenge was so brutal that I don't even know how to recover. My affair with Martin started 2 years ago, long before my pregnancy. Back then, Ryan and I were just dating. He hadn't proposed yet, but we were serious, and I truly wanted things to work out between us. Still, things didn't go the way I hoped. It's not like I told Ryan that I no longer found him sexually attractive, or maybe I was never really attracted to him sexually. It's confusing. When we first got together, I was obsessed with him. I was genuinely crazy about him. I don't even know when or how that changed. I didn't wake up one day and decide I wasn't into him anymore. It just slowly happened, and I don't understand why. What I do know is I didn't want to leave him. I loved him. I still do. I wanted our relationship to work so badly. So even when I wasn't feeling connected or turned on during our intimate moments, I didn't say anything. I just went along with it. I kept quiet, thinking maybe the spark would come back. But it didn't. Then, Martin happened, and I know how this sounds. But it wasn't just sex or lust. It was more like something I hadn't felt in a long time. I'm not proud of it, but I also don't want to lie about it anymore. The beginning of everything really started when Ryan told me his father would be coming to stay with us for a while. They were super close, and he loved his dad deeply. Ryan lost his mom when he was just a kid, so it had always been just the two of them. His dad, Martin, had a lot of free time on his hands back then, and decided to spend most of it with us. At first, I genuinely appreciated their bond. I never had that kind of connection with my own parents. They weren't good to me growing up. So watching how close they were, it was something I admired. And from day one, Martin treated me like his own daughter. He was kind, attentive, caring, everything I wished I had in a parent. Ryan and I were both grateful for how loving and supportive he was. But then Ryan's job started getting really demanding. He had to travel a lot, come home late, sometimes not even make it home at all during the week. And during those times, it was just me and Martin. We'd talk, cook together, and watch movies. We spent a lot of time alone, maybe too much time. The first time it happened, Martin and I were sitting in the living room, drinking wine and talking. It wasn't anything unusual, we often talked. But that night, he said something that caught me off guard. He told me he could tell I hadn't been myself lately. I didn't even know how he noticed, but he was right. At first, I didn't want to open up. I mean, he's Ryan's father, the last person I should be talking to about my relationship problems. But he was gentle, patient, and really listened. He always had this calm energy around him, and I felt safe. Eventually, I opened up about what had been going on between Ryan and me, how things just didn't feel the same anymore, how I didn't feel attracted to Ryan or connected, and yet I couldn't bring myself to leave. I was scared, honestly. Ryan gave me a stable life, and I didn't have a backup plan. I didn't want to feel like I was using him. I truly loved him, and every part of me still does. I just didn't know how we drifted so far apart in terms of intimacy. Martin didn't judge me. He comforted me and gave me advice, and I remember feeling so thankful he was there. Then, as we were sitting in that soft, wine-blurred silence, he said something I still don't fully understand. He told me he loved me. I froze. I didn't know if he meant it as a father-in-law figure or something more, but something in his tone made it feel personal and intimate. The moment felt heavy, and maybe it was the loneliness, the wine, or the vulnerability. I don't know what came over me, but I kissed him, and he didn't pull away. When I realized what I did, I panicked and immediately apologized. I kept saying I was sorry over and over, but he just smiled and told me it was nothing. He wasn't upset, so I told him I'd like to call it a night, and he said no problem, and I should know that he would always be there for me, and that he was willing to give me whatever I wanted. Whatever I wanted? Those words rang in my head because I didn't even understand what he meant at first. So I just said I was grateful, and told him he shouldn't mention the kiss to Ryan. He said he'd be a fool to do that, and that our secret was totally safe. And before I could stand up and go, he pulled me into a kiss, and this time, neither of us pulled away. It felt so good. The next morning, we woke up naked next to each other. My heart sank. I wanted to throw up. I ran to the bathroom crying and stayed in the shower forever. I think I showered 5 times that day because I felt so disgusted. But still, days later, I found myself going back to him. I couldn't resist. He was insanely good in bed, and the connection we had, something I'd been craving for so long, I found it in him. So we kept it quiet and low. We kept sleeping with each other and even hung out sometimes. Ryan didn't see anything wrong with our closeness. He was actually really grateful. He was happy that I finally had a father figure, someone I always wanted, not knowing it was way beyond that. Then one day I found out I was pregnant, and I knew it wasn't Ryan's. It's not like me and him didn't have intimate moments anymore. We did, but barely. Most of the time it was with Martin. Martin didn't live with us anymore, but he still visited. Sometimes I'd go over to his place too. We were still sleeping with each other. So when I found out I was pregnant, I panicked. I didn't know what to do. I wanted to tell Ryan the truth. I really did because I pitied him. But I also knew that saying the truth would ruin everything. It would destroy both of our lives, his relationship with his dad, our future, all of it. And I didn't want to be the reason he lost everything. So instead, I just called Martin and told him we needed to stop sneaking around. He asked me why, and I told him if he didn't agree with the decision, I was going to tell his son that he abused me sexually, and since he had no evidence to prove otherwise, Ryan would believe me and cut him off. Martin valued his relationship with his son too much to risk that, so he actually listened and we ended things. The only thing left was to pin the pregnancy on Ryan and make sure he never suspected anything. That evening, when Ryan got home from work, I told him I was pregnant. He was so happy, like genuinely over the moon happy. He even proposed right there. He said he'd been planning to for a while, and this just felt like the perfect moment. Said he wanted to spend his life with me. And honestly, I was so happy too. Everything was perfect, and I wasn't going to let any distractions come in between. I couldn't bear losing him or being seen as a shame publicly. The following week, Ryan called his dad to share the news about my pregnancy and our engagement. He invited him over for a celebratory dinner. Martin sounded a bit shocked at first, but he quickly covered it up with fake happiness. He said he couldn't make it to dinner because he already had travel plans with his friends, but that when he got back, we'd celebrate properly. Honestly, I was relieved. I didn't want any awkwardness. I didn't want him around to ruin things for me and Ryan. So during the first few months of my pregnancy, Martin was completely absent. He didn't show up in our lives at all, and I was perfectly fine with that. Ryan, on the other hand, was more present than ever. He did everything, took me to every doctor's appointment, made sure I had everything I needed. One day after a checkup, we found out it was going to be a girl. On the drive home, he just smiled and said he has always loved the name Lily. If it's okay with me, I'd really love to name her that. I didn't mind at all. I loved seeing him that happy. I said yes. Then one day, Martin suddenly came back. I think it was about 3 months before my due date. He apologized for being absent and said he had planned this long trip with his friends and couldn't back out at the last minute. But honestly, I think that was just a cover-up. I think he was heartbroken and disappointed when I told him I didn't want anything to do with him anymore, especially after hearing about the pregnancy and the engagement. He just needed time to disappear and deal with it. And to be sincere, I didn't care. As long as his little excuse didn't mess with my relationship with Ryan, he could say whatever he wanted. When the time for dinner came, Ryan had gone into the kitchen to get the food and set the table, and it was just me and Martin in the living room. It was awkward and quiet at first, and I wanted to join Ryan because I couldn't bear sitting there anymore. That's when Martin turned to me and asked about the baby and questioned if the baby was truly Ryan's. I just stared at him and tried to hold back my anger because I was angry. I didn't want this to ever be a conversation between us. So I told Martin that it wasn't any of his business and that he should stay out of it completely. But Martin wouldn't let it go. He said even if I didn't want to admit the truth to Ryan, at least he should know because deep down I knew the baby was his. I told him that it didn't matter what I tried to do or who I tried to pin it on, that it was the same bloodline and didn't change anything. Then I concluded by telling him that I didn't want to hear another word about it, that this would be the last time we ever had that conversation, period. And right then, Ryan walked in and smiled at us. I was sure he was completely unaware, and I was happy that he came in after I completely shut down the discussion. He rushed over to me and asked if everything was okay. He seemed worried because he saw how twisted my face was before it melted into a smile. I just told him I was a little tired and wanted to go lie down for a bit. He believed me, and I hated that I had to lie to his face like that. He said there was no problem and that there would always be another time for us to share a meal together as a family. Then he walked me to our room, helped me lie down, kissed my forehead, and told me to rest. After that, he went back to hang out with his dad. I just laid there, overthinking everything, praying that Martin would never bring it up again. Deep down, I had a gut feeling he wouldn't. He was scared, and he knew what I could do. He knew I'd flip the story and paint him as the villain, and that was the last thing he wanted. He valued his image in front of Ryan too much. So yeah, I felt safe, but that didn't stop my mind from running in circles. I couldn't stop thinking. I was still lost in my thoughts when Ryan came back, maybe an hour later or so. He sat beside me and gently shook me. He said his dad had to leave early. Then he looked at me and asked if I was okay, and that I looked so deep in thought just then, and what was I thinking about? I just smiled and said that it was nothing. Sometimes pregnant women just space out like that. He laughed and kissed my cheek, and then we went to bed. The next morning, Ryan told me there was a work emergency and that he had to travel. I was pissed. I told him straight up that I needed him around, and he knew that it felt like he was just abandoning me when I was already dealing with so much. He tried to calm me down, said it was just for a day or two, and that he wouldn't have left if it wasn't important. Then he said something that made my stomach turn. He told me to call his dad to come over if I felt bored or lonely or needed anything. I stared at him like he was crazy. I asked him how he could even say that it felt cruel. He looked confused and asked why, and he thought I was close with his father, and that he was basically my father too, unless I was trying to tell him something has changed. I froze. Then I shook my head and said, "No, of course not. That I was just saying I'll be fine. I'm sure I can handle 2 days, and we would talk on the phone a lot anyway," and he smiled and said if that's what I wanted, then there was no problem. And just like that, he left. 2 days went by, and Ryan and I didn't speak. He didn't call, didn't text, and he didn't even pick up my calls. At first, I thought maybe he was just really busy or something came up, but by the end of day 2, the silence started to eat at me. I didn't want to call Martin. I really didn't, but I was getting desperate, and I felt so alone. So I called him. He picked up once, just once, and he said, "Don't ever call me again," before hanging up. I was devastated. I didn't have any real friends, not the kind you call and cry to. I didn't want to bother my family either. I figured I'd be fine on my own. Just breathe, wait it out, and cope till Ryan gets back. I told myself maybe he was delayed a few more days or his phone was acting up. I tried to believe he'd never actually abandoned me, but I was wrong. A few weeks to my due date, and Ryan still hadn't come back. His number wasn't connecting anymore, and Martin wouldn't even look in my direction. That was when it hit me. Something wasn't right. Something hadn't been right since the night he walked out that door. I stayed up all night crying, like full body shaking, pillow-soaked crying, overthinking everything, every little thing I said, and every move I made. When did it all fall apart, and where exactly did I lose him? But on the other hand, I kept wondering, what if my mind was just playing tricks on me? What if Ryan didn't actually leave me? I mean, he had no reason to. I was sure Martin hadn't said anything to him. He wouldn't dare. So I tried to calm myself and think rationally. Then I got this idea in my head. I decided I'd go to his workplace and talk to his boss. Maybe even guilt him a little by asking him why he'd send Ryan away when I was literally about to pop. But what I heard when I got there shattered me. His boss looked at me with this awkward expression, like he didn't know if he should say anything, and then he said that Ryan had transferred to another city. He didn't just leave the office temporarily or go for a work trip. He packed up, signed papers, and left. I just stood there, staring at the guy like he was lying. Like maybe this was a prank or I was hearing wrong. But he wasn't lying. Ryan was gone. I walked out of there numb, angry, and confused. The only thing that made sense in that moment was that maybe he had someone else, and he left me to go be with her. And he didn't even have the decency to look me in the eye and say it. He just disappeared and left me here, pregnant and alone, looking like a damn fool. I went back home. All I did was cry and cry. If he truly ran away, how am I going to survive? I quit my job around month 6. I told him I was exhausted, and he supported my decision, and now he was gone. Now he just left. How about our wedding, our future? The worst thing is that I couldn't even go meet his dad about it because I had messed up that relationship and I was so hopeless. I couldn't believe that Ryan would be that wicked. I kept hoping every single day. I thought maybe Ryan would walk through that door and tell me it was all just a mistake and that something happened. But he didn't. He didn't even call or anything. I even found out that. And then I went into labor, alone. There was no one to hold my hand, no one to drive me to the hospital. I literally had to call a cab between contractions, crying the whole ride there, praying I wouldn't give birth in the back seat. I lay there in that hospital bed, sweating and shaking and screaming, and the only person who held my hand was a nurse who didn't even know my name until an hour before. I gave birth to my daughter alone, with no family and no Ryan, and as beautiful as she was, the pain overshadowed everything. It's not just the physical pain, but that gut-wrenching ache that the person I was supposed to build this life with just disappeared. Now here's where it gets worse. Ryan had a really good job, like solid benefits, 6-figure type job. When we got serious, he added me as a domestic partner so I'd have full prenatal coverage since I wasn't working much. It felt like security. So when I gave birth, the hospital ran the insurance and it came back canceled. And he did it just days before my due date. They had to bill me directly because our joint account was already drained and the cards declined. And you know what the kicker was? I ended up pulling all my personal savings to cover the bill. Everything I had ever worked for was gone, and I had to start my new life as a nurse with no money. I was down, and not just financially, emotionally, and spiritually. I had never felt that kind of humiliation before in my life. What hurt the most was I still loved him, and even after all that, I still wanted answers, closure, something and anything. But all I got was silence. I am a nursing mother with a baby I wasn't even sure I could afford to feed, and Ryan didn't even look back. So I decided to sell off a few things in the house, furniture, electronics, anything that could give me just enough to survive a few more weeks with my baby. I had no choice. I was exhausted, weak, still bleeding, still healing, and barely had strength to stand, let alone care for a newborn. But I couldn't give up. I couldn't do that to my baby. I don't think I've ever felt that close to death. Not in the literal way, but emotionally, like my soul was collapsing inside of me. Then came the final blow, which was a knock on the door with 2 polite strangers, smiling, but they seemed almost unbothered. They told me that they were the new owners of the house and I needed to vacate in the next few days because they wanted to move in. Apparently, Ryan sold the house. I didn't even react at first. My brain literally couldn't register what they were saying. Sold? Vacate? Where the hell was I supposed to go? I closed the door, sat on the floor, held my baby, and cried, and cried, and cried, until I couldn't breathe anymore. And when I finally got up, I knew what I had to do. I packed what I could in one bag, strapped my daughter to my chest, and made my way to Martin's house. Yes, Martin. The same man I threatened. The same man I swore to stay away from. But this time, I wasn't about anything sinful. It was because he was the biological father, and he needed to take responsibility for his actions because his son had disappeared on us. But when I got there, Martin was moving out. I couldn't even process it at first. I was so confused. I stood there, staring at him, asking what was going on. He looked at me with this cold, empty expression and just said that I should get out. He didn't even care about the baby that I was with. I was shocked, like, what the hell? He then went on to say that it was because of me that his relationship with his son was completely ruined. So if I was okay, then you can leave with the ruins. My heart sank. I was like, wait, what? What do you mean? But my voice was shaky. He scoffed and said that if I didn't know that Ryan heard us that night in the living room, then I was even dumber than he thought. Then he added that he remembered me telling him that baby wasn't any of his business, so now, here I was. My legs went weak. I had to sit down on the floor, holding my baby close to me. I couldn't even process it. That was when it hit me. like a ton of bricks. Ryan didn't leave me because he had an affair with someone else. No, he left because he found out about Martin and me. He knew everything. And this whole time I thought I was the one being betrayed. But I'd been living in a lie. I couldn't breathe. I had no idea what to say. I started crying and pleading with Martin, but he left me there. He didn't even look back, even when he saw me with the baby. Why do I have to suffer alone for the mess he created with me? Also, Ryan is cold, wicked, and heartless for leaving me like this. He didn't even have the decency to say anything to me. He just walked away like I was nothing. Now I'm here, broke, homeless, with a baby to take care of when I can't even take care of myself. I feel completely lost. I can't even think straight anymore. It's like I'm suffocating in my own thoughts. Ryan didn't have to be this cruel. He didn't have to. If he was hurt, fine, but he could have at least talked to me about it, made some effort. Instead, he just abandoned me. And now I'm left with all this mess, trying to hold everything together on my own. It's like the weight of the world is on my shoulders, and I don't even know how to keep going. I don't know what to do anymore. I'm so tired. Update. I'll start by saying life is cruel, but Ryan is crueler. I'm at a breaking point. This is hard to share, but I need to get it off my chest. When he left me, he knew I was pregnant and almost due, but he didn't even bother to ask if I made it through, if I had the baby safely, if I was eating or even surviving. He took everything and left. Still, I had hope because he didn't officially break off our engagement. I even named my daughter Lily because I couldn't give up Ryan yet. So after my last post, things only got worse. When Martin heartlessly left me behind, I called an old friend, and she agreed to take me in, even though we weren't as close anymore. She knew Ryan, even though she wasn't really close with me either, and she knew he was loaded. So she questioned why I was alone with a baby. I couldn't tell her the truth. I was ashamed of myself, so I lied. I told her Ryan had traveled for a work trip and that I couldn't reach him. I said I needed to be around someone for a few days, given my situation, until I figured things out, and that I couldn't afford to stay alone. I knew she didn't fully believe my story, but she said okay and let me stay. But as the days turned into a week, she turned into a different person entirely. She started treating me badly, making comments about me needing to leave soon. She even told me I should go to Ryan's workplace and find out what was going on. The situation was unbearable. I realized I couldn't keep staying there, so I decided to leave. Every day felt worse, and I felt more alone. I just wanted to fix things, and I didn't know where to start. The next day, I told her that I had finally been able to reach Ryan, that we were going to meet up, and that everything would be fine. She acted like she cared, but it felt like nothing more than an act. The days turned into a week. She started getting more offended. She couldn't throw me out because she pitied my baby, but I could see the way she was treating me. She was doing all the feedings, all the care because I was broke. The more I stayed, the more she'd tell me to leave soon, telling me to go to Ryan's company and find out from his boss what was going on. I was suffocating in her pity. I felt like I was being thrown out of someone's kindness, and I didn't even know how to handle it. Every day felt worse, and I felt more alone. I just wanted to fix things, but had no idea where to start. So the next day, I lied and told her that I was able to reach Ryan and that I was going to meet him. I told her Ryan said my baby and I could come over. She acted like she cared, but if she truly did, why would she make me feel uncomfortable or even complain about it? At that point, leaving there meant cutting her off, and that's exactly what I did. When I left her place, I had no place in mind. I wasn't ready to wander around the street like some loser, so I made a choice that was quite difficult for me. Call me whatever you want, but I did what was best for my child. I couldn't just keep living like this. I had to take control, even if it meant swallowing my pride. The last thing I wanted was for my daughter to see me as someone who couldn't fight for what she needed. I knew I had to find a way out of this mess. I wasn't going to let my baby and I suffer just because of what Ryan had done to me. I called my parents. I know I wasn't close to them, but they were the only option I had left. I showed up at their house with some cash I took from my friend's place, something I hated myself for doing. But I was desperate. I thought maybe they would treat my daughter better than they treated me. But I was wrong. It felt like I wasn't welcome there either. The tension was palpable, and I couldn't stay there. So I made the hardest decision of my life. I left my baby with them. I just couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't care for her like she deserved. I know people will judge me for this, but I felt like I had no choice. I didn't want to abandon her, but I couldn't see a way forward. After that, I traveled to Ryan's workplace. I was determined to confront him. I needed him to know that we were still engaged, that he had no right to disappear without saying a word to me. But when I got there, I found out he'd moved on. Ryan was with his new girlfriend, and she didn't even know who I was. I walked up to him, trying to hold it together, and asked him why he'd left me when I was pregnant and needed him the most. His girlfriend was confused and asked who I was, and Ryan just shrugged it off. He said he didn't know me, that I was mad, that I'd lost my mind. That was when I realized how truly cold he was. He walked away with her, leaving me standing there with no answers and no hope. I went back to my parents' house, and things only got worse. They started shouting at me, telling me that why I never liked me, because they knew I was only going to bring shame to them. They didn't know my story yet. They judged me. They said that they couldn't care for me or her, and that I needed to call an adoption agency and give my daughter up. They told me it was the best option for her. And as much as it hurt, as much as I felt like I was breaking, I knew deep down they were right. I couldn't take care of her the way she deserved. So I did it. I called the adoption agency. I know I'm the one who gave birth to her, but at that moment, I felt like I couldn't do it anymore. I had to let go. I don't know if I'll ever forgive myself for this, but I couldn't see another way out. Maybe I'm selfish, maybe I'm a terrible person, but I had to survive. I didn't want to be judged, but I needed to do what was best for my baby, even if it meant letting her go.